Welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast, a podcast about women who work in sports. I'm your host, Jahaan Blake. After 15 years of working for 3 major league teams, including the Boston Red Sox, Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Chicago Cubs, I discovered the one thing I loved the most was helping women in sports shatter glass ceilings and take their seat at the table. I loved it so much that I made a business out of it. I have the honor of coaching high-performing women in the sports and entertainment industry and supporting them as they go after exactly what they want in their career. So if you are feeling tired of waiting on the sidelines, done being overlooked for promotions, and you're ready to pull ahead of the pack and take your career to the next level, girl, I'm here for it. I also created the Game of Her Own podcast to support you as well. We are here to share the stories of incredible women who work in sports and entertainment. These leaders and trailblazers will inspire you with their success and the lessons they've learned along the way to the top. Ladies, there is nothing like women empowering women. I am so honored you're here. Closed mouths don't get fed. You have to advocate for yourself. You are your best champion. Those are just some of the great gems that Melanie LeGrande, Vice President of Social Responsibility for MLB, drops during this episode. Ladies, it is no surprise that Melanie was named Sports Business Journal Game Changer in 2019. During this interview, Melanie shares some great advice that you don't want to miss. We talk about advocating for yourself. Make sure you're always in the room. And my favorite, how you can use writing for your professional and personal growth. Oh, and don't forget to check the show notes of this episode. Actually, check it for all of them. I always included links that we referenced during the episode so you know exactly what we're talking about and where to find it. All right, ladies, let's jump in. Melanie, welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast. I am so glad you're here. Welcome.
Oh, I'm so pleased to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right. So, in the beginning, I always like to take it back and have our guests tell us when they first fell in love with sports.
I say this to people, friends, colleagues, and whomever will listen to me. I am not an athlete. I am not athletically inclined. I have played beer league softball and tripped over first base multiple times. People have seen it. It's not pretty.
Wait, is there a video of this?
There's not videos, thank God, but there's definitely probably some indentations and some ballpark diamonds of me rolling. Beer league softball, they have the 2 bases. One is orange, one's white. Which one do you step on? It's very confusing.
Well, it sounds confusing.
So it is confusing. I'm not an athlete, but I am highly competitive. I love sports. I've always loved watching sports. I'm competitive at a game night, break out the Scrabble and the Clue and the Taboo and the gestures, all those things. So when did I first fall in love with sport? I would say at a young age. My dad, back in the day, mostly we're from Virginia, but he's a military man, so we moved around a bit. But mostly in Virginia, we were Redskins fans growing up, the Doug Williams days. Mm-hmm. And so watching games with my dad, I'm one of 3 girls, and I was the boy in that scenario. Watching games with my dad was really cool. So I probably would say 6 or 7 was when I first started paying attention to sports on TV. We lived in Alabama for a little bit, and so we went to a Braves game. That was my first professional sporting event. So I would say because I'm one of 3 girls and my dad saw something in me, he has a love of sports, and that really just passed down to me.
Oh, all right. So a Redskins fan.
Back in the day. Washington football team is their name now.
Right. Yes. The Washington football team. Talk to me. When did you, because you went off to be I think your first job, correct me if I'm wrong, was working for the Dolphins as an intern, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, I graduated from college 20 years ago. My first job was with Verizon Communications. Mm. And I was a manager in a call center. And it was an amazing job because it gave me a foundation of a corporation. There was structure to it. There were employee resource groups. There was management training. I still keep some of the booklets that I learned on conflict resolution and negotiation from 19 years ago. So it gave me a great foundation, but I did not enjoy the job. and I would take days off to go volunteer for the Baltimore Ravens. And I would literally take a PTO day to go to the Ravens facility. At that point, cut newspaper clippings, put them on paper, tape them, copy them, and distribute them. So back in the day, I had a full-time job, but I loved sports so much that I would forego, some of the pay to do great things in sports. And I realized that I wanted to be in sports. I didn't want to just do this to help out. I wanted it to be my career. So I went to grad school, did more volunteering, and then my first full-time role, even as an intern, was with the Dolphins in South Florida. So that was 17 years ago. Media relations intern.
Wow. Okay. So you're working for Verizon and you are a manager. So I'm assuming you're full-time salary.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Taking days off to go volunteer for the Ravens.
Yeah.
And cut paper. So here you are, a manager running a call center. Right? Which I think is impressive in itself, because that's not easy to do. And then you're just, I'm going to take the day off and I'm going to go, cut clips and put those together for people.
Wow. That was the intensity of my passion for sports. I'm learning other things here, getting a full paid salary, but I don't want to miss out. And the missing out was being a part of the energy and the environment. And that year, February 2001, or January, I think back then, the Ravens went to the Super Bowl. So I went to the Super Bowl. So I took a week off from work at Verizon and volunteered down in Tampa for the Super Bowl when the Ravens were in it against the Giants, and they won. So, it was an amazing time, fortuitous timing for me.
Okay. So now how did you go from working for the Dolphins to being a director of community relations for the Ravens?
So when I finished the internship for the Dolphins, I had kept connections for a while. And one of the connections was the head of public relations for the Ravens, obviously. And to this day, he's a mentor to me. I literally just talked to him last week. He just retired. So I've known him for 20 plus years. And he called me when I finished the internship and said, hey, we're carving out this community relations department. The person they had in that space, their title was like corporate partnerships manager. And so they said, look, we're going to have an actual CR department. And so that person needs someone working with him. And so they flew me up from Florida to Baltimore and hired me. So I started as the community relations assistant with the Ravens, full-time, real deal work. I started in April of 2004, making less than half of what I had made at Verizon 2 years earlier.
Yep, that sounds about right.
But I was like, this is amazing. This is amazing. I tell you, I'm a writer. I love to write. I'm a journal person. And I still have this article that I wrote in the early career at the Ravens. And the article was about stealing. And I felt like I was so happy to do that job. I would have taken less. And I felt like I was stealing my salary because I was just so excited and happy to be doing that job. And I'm a different person now that understands the value of all the work, obviously. But when you're 26 and you're doing with the professional sports team and having the time of your life and gaining skills, nothing can match it.
I completely agree. I remember making $7 an hour. Some people I worked with said it was much lower than that. But when I was at the Red Sox, made no money. But I had so much fun. I mean, I may have went into a little bit of debt back then.
Yeah.
But it was so worth it. Like you said, I mean, literally it was like the time of my life when I was working for the Red Sox and other teams too. But there's something different when you're first getting started.
Yeah. When you're in your 20s.
Yes.
Things change.
Yes, things definitely change and priorities change. Talk a little bit about this writing that you did. This article, was it like an article that you kind of put out on LinkedIn or?
Oh gosh, no way. I mean, it's, 14, 15 years ago. I have written in journals since I was 9. Mm-hmm. So, for 30 plus years, I have all of the journals. I have in my will for one of my best friends to burn said journals should I pass away. They need not be made public. Let's just say that. They're very, very honest about many different topics. So those things will be burned immediately. when I'm gone from this earth. Because I enjoy writing and I really have a communications background. My master's is in sports administration, but my concentration is sports information. So I was covering non-revenue generating sports. I was covering cross country and track and golf and writing about those things. So comms is it really underscores everything that I do. When I decided to go back to grad school, I took a course in PR at the University of Maryland, which was something that actually translated to my master's degree when I went to Georgia State. But I love writing so much that I write kind of personal essay style. It's a dream of mine to be published. I will take writing classes. So in Baltimore, I took a couple classes at Johns Hopkins for continuing education. When I was in California, I took a class at Stanford for continuing education. And even here, I've taken a class at NYU. Because I enjoy it so much, because my dream is to one day be published, I think being around people who push you to write, because you're so busy. Work is so busy.
Yes.
And writing for pleasure takes a back seat. And you read all these books. Stephen King has a great book called On Writing. And he's like, you have to commit to the time and the space and an actual location in your house. I just haven't done it. So you asked me the question, is it out there? No, it's in a closet here in my apartment where I keep all the rest of my writing.
Nothing wrong with that, at least, but you're doing it, right?
Exactly. It's therapeutic for me, for sure.
That's good. All right. Take us back to the Ravens. So you start as assistant, is that correct?
Yeah, community relations.
And then you go all the way to director. So talk to us about how you learned to, or maybe you knew already, to advocate for yourself to make that jump and keep growing.
My mother, for many years, worked for the government, whether we were stationed at an Army base. She worked, at Fort Belvoir in Virginia. In southeastern Virginia, when my dad was stationed at an Army base, she worked at the local Air Force base. And a lot of the work she did was on transition assistance, helping service members feel better about transitioning from military to civilian life. And so I think she has ingrained in us this: make sure you're set, make sure you're advocating for yourself, make sure you're in a position for the next step, because really that was her professional expertise. And so probably it's a part of me. And so when I finished my first year with the Ravens, I went to the human resources department to say, I know I'm getting paid this salary. I kind of feel like I should be getting paid a little bit more.
I think I'm stealing, but I still feel more.
Yes. I was like, like I said, you're in your 20s. And so you kind of have these weird feelings, but I went to HR and said, I just want to advocate for myself in a financial sense. I don't know that I will be okay making this salary long-term. And so I'd love to talk to you about an opportunity for more funding. And then I got a really nice raise. So I learned, at 25 years old, my boyfriend hates it when I say it, but closed mouths don't get fed. I'll always say it. They really,
you're 100% right.
Yes, you have to advocate for yourself. If no one is championing you, like, you're your best champion, right? You can speak to your expertise. You can speak to your passion, all the work that you want to do and the work that you're able to do. So the way that I progressed in the career, there was a director of community relations. There was myself, the community relations assistant. I am a person who is a process improver. And I really enjoy, I'm a project management kind of person. So I really enjoy the soup to nuts. I really enjoy the conception, the implementation, and the evaluation. And I'm able to say, okay, I think we're doing that in this way, but what if we pivot and do it this way? Maybe it's a little bit better. And I am pretty sure that doing those things, speaking up for myself, giving my educated opinion, I will say that for the people listening, just throwing out your opinion every place is not always going to be the best thing for you to do. Giving an educated opinion on why I think this could be added, this could be changed, this could be supported by X, really put me in a position where people saw the value. And so I was promoted each of the first 3 years that I was there. I went from community relations assistant, community relations coordinator, community relations manager, each year. And then our director decided to leave, and they promoted me to director. And In parallel, the timing was also fortuitous again. There was a change in ownership, which meant there was a change in the strategy for the charitable foundation. And I really stepped up with the charitable foundation. I joined the board. I was starting to do a lot of the work around partnerships, around project management for some of our big projects. And they were like, wait a minute, well, we think you should be in the executive director role as well. So, I was in a position where people respected the value that I brought to the environment, to the work, and respected that I had an educated opinion. Sometimes they listened to and sometimes they didn't, which is how it is wherever you work.
Mm-hmm. I have so many questions. Okay. So that was all. You gave us so much good stuff. So let's talk about your approach to advocating for yourself. I'm imagining as a young age is very smart. So I was set to ask this question, then I wasn't. Now I'm going to ask it. What would you tell your younger self now? Because I think your approach back then was smart, but now having 18 more years or a little bit less experience, what would you tell your younger self now about advocating for yourself?
I would tell myself to make sure it's the right timing and the right environment. I mentioned my old boss, who's still my mentor. Early on in my career, my face tends to betray myself. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, where you got that face on, where people are like, okay, we realize, you don't agree, but, fix your face. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. So I think I tell my younger self, and I would probably tell my 42-year-old self right now, I have a sticky at my desk that says, check your perspective, because I have to still say that to myself 20 years later. Like, watch who you are and the perception that people have of you in the room. And you do everything you can to make your voice heard. But what's the thing about it's easier to catch flies with honey than something else? It's just, so I don't know. I would probably tell my younger self to make sure timing and the environment is the right one for you to say your piece and walk away with your head held high.
All right. So you're bringing ideas and solutions and you're educating yourself, right? You're coming in with information. You're educating yourself. That's so important. So what do you do, or what advice would you give other women who are working in sports and get told no time after time, even if they're using that approach, but they keep getting, no's for answer? How do you handle that rejection?
Well, I think having a champion in the room and outside the room is probably the best way to do that. And also to take a good look. Are you being told no because of how you were pitching it? Are you being told no because maybe the idea was already floated? Are you being told no because the idea isn't fleshed out? So take a look first, do some self-reflection. And then if you realize, look, I'm doing all the right things. I'm putting together this deck. I have all the data, and you're still not being heard. Find an ally in the room and outside the room. And I think it's important to have that person in the room to say, hey, Melanie, that's a great idea. Why don't you tell us more? And a lot of times it's a man. I have a number of male mentors who are older than me, who are much farther along in their career than me. You've got your personal board of directors, and having them be my champion, I can't even, we don't have enough time for me to tell you how much they've helped to advance my career.
Mm-hmm. Yes. My mentor, I would call all the time. Poor thing. When I finally, left, we worked at my first two teams together, and my third team, I was just always calling him, just like, okay, I have this question. It's part of the reason I became a coach, because I was like, okay, your mentor can only answer so many questions. But right. I think the key thing that you said there was having a champion and an ally. That's important. It shouldn't just be someone who looks like you. It doesn't have to be a woman. It doesn't have to be a Black woman. It just can be, you have to have a broad group of mentors and allies. And then I also love what I'm hearing you say is just get curious about why you're hearing no, right? And ask a lot of questions, because that's where I find that you just learn so much more and understand where they're coming from instead of making that assumption.
Yeah. And for me, writing helps. Like I said, it's therapeutic. It helps me to process. I'll start on a page and be angry. I'll be so angry. And this is personal and professional. And I'll start writing, just writing venom. I'm so mad. And then when I get to page 4 and I finally peeled back the onion to be like, oh, wait, I wasn't actually mad at that. I was mad at this. And then that's how you can tackle it. And that's personal and professional. And I think for me, that's what writing helps me to do, like to think it through and just figure out on the surface, I thought it was X. But when you get down to underneath, it really was Y. And you need to just think about and focus and tackle Y first. And then everything else will be a little bit smoother.
Yes. I wish we knew each other before. A couple of weeks ago. So while I don't have journals that need to be burned when I leave this earth, but I do use that same sort of technique in terms of writing. Like for me, it's when I get nervous and I have something big coming up. And so I share this with women who are listening. Just it's easy to just jot it down. Why are you nervous? And I had a big client, one of my biggest clients when I first started my own business, and it just all of a sudden I was like, oh God, I'm here. I'm in the hotel room. I can see the stadium. I'm about to go in, and I just wrote it all out. And I don't know what happened, but I was much lighter.
Yeah.
And it went well, but I felt clear when I got there, and all of that stuff that's swirling in my head was now on paper, and I kind of left it there at the hotel.
Yeah.
And that's where it's
yeah. It's a technique in many ways.
Yeah.
It's a technique for processing grief. It's a technique for processing breakups. It's personal and professional, because I'm a spiritual person. And so I'll just say, when you wrote that down, you kind of let go and you let God, right? And you're just like, I've put it down, it's out in the world, and now it can fly away. You see it a lot when people are just writing. I think I had a bad breakup many moons ago. And someone I talked to said, you need to write a letter to that person, not for him to read, but for your own processing. And you write the letter, and then you tear it up and you burn it, and you really you let it go.
You know,
we're getting way too deep on this podcast.
I got the chills like 3 times. We totally are. So I'm going to say this one thing, and then I have a question about something else, but you're clearly onto something and it's working, but the timing is right. Like, there's so many people right now who have such broken hearts because their dreams have been taken away from them because of COVID. And I'm talking about people who've been let go, from sports teams, and there are some massive, massive layoffs and lots of tears and broken hearts. And I feel like it's a great idea to write your boss, write the owner, whoever you're having those feelings towards, right? Because I know I've heard people vent to me. It's just writing to them. Don't send it, but write that to them. And that would be helpful. So thank you for that.
It's a wonderful idea, because I don't know where we'll go. We may go into the mental health space, which is at a crisis right now. But for you as a person who is feeling at your core hurt and upset and just in a bad place right now, if you've been laid off or furloughed and that's a great idea. Just write it to your boss, write it to the owner, write it to the person who made the decision. Like, I'm upset. I feel like maybe I wasn't valued, or someone else was valued before me, and I have value, and I want to tell you why I have value. You never know. If you write that down, that could be the catalyst for you figuring out how to find the new role, because then you've taken stock of who you are as a person and what you do in your work. And it may show you, oh my gosh, this might be the best opportunity for me to find my next adventure. I love that idea.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. Your expertise definitely just made that pop in my head. I have some free stuff for you. Yes, you. Ladies, I know how difficult it is to take the steps to level up your career. I have been in your shoes. It's why I started coaching women in the sports and entertainment industry. If you feel stuck, frustrated, or defeated, I'm here to help you find your voice and tackle what is ever keeping you from getting exactly what you want out of your career. So the free stuff, I want you to head over to jahaanblake.com/free. That's jahaanblake.com/free, and check out the 3 worksheets I have for you. You are welcome to download 1, 2, or all 3 of them. These free worksheets will help you stop self-doubt from preventing you to taking your career to the next level. Prepare you to pitch your boss for the promotion or raise you deserve. Identify exactly what you want out of your career and what matters most to you. So if you are ready to get started, head over to jahaanblake.com/free, and girl, download those worksheets. I am so excited for you to take this step. Okay, back to the interview. Okay, tell us about moving to California. So you left sports, correct?
I did leave sports. As a double director, that's what they called me, some people, I really was enjoying the philanthropic side so much more. The nonprofit partnerships, the impact I was seeing. There are some programs that I started a long time ago that they still have at the Ravens. It's a wonderful feeling. So I am very, very big on scholarships and education. And so we started a scholarship program. I launched a scholarship program at the Ravens called the Ravens Scholars. And they just celebrated 10 years. They're still doing it. I was just texting with one of our scholarship recipients from a long time ago because we're still friends. She's in the working world now. She lives in New York City. We get together for coffee. I remember reading her application. I remember interviewing her for the scholarship that would give her $20,000 to go to University of Maryland to be amazing. And, that was really great work for me. The flip side of my work was the day-to-day, reading the letters, doing donation requests, getting a player to a school visit or to a, fan fest kind of convention or something. And that was all rewarding work as well. But I really loved the deep work. The deep work of, hey, Boys Hope, Girls Hope, you're an amazing nonprofit. We're going to do a 5-year relationship with you. I'm going to come over, meet the young men. I'm going to have dinner. I'm going to, be friends with the executive director, so much so that when he left to do the same work in New Orleans, I supported that one personally. That kind of stuff gets me going. And so I felt that I wanted to do more of that work in a different environment that allowed me to go deeper with my own expertise. When you work at one specific team, you're really supporting that specific community, which was great. And I love Baltimore, and I went to college in Baltimore, so I lived in that city for a very long time. But when I went to California and started working for Silicon Valley Community Foundation, I did the same work, just with a greater depth to it. So instead of saying to a player X, hey, what's your background? What's your experience? How can we work together to have community impact? Or what is it that you want to do in the community? I was doing that with companies. Hey, Microsoft, Silicon Valley, how can I support your high-level engineers to give back to the community through board service? Hey, HP, I recognize that you have funding to support military charities. I'm a military brat. I can help you to facilitate grant funding all over the country to different military installations. I was doing that work in a greater sense, and that was amazing. I was working with companies, hey, Texas Instruments or whomever, you have operations in India. Did you know that there's a law in India at that time that required you to give a percentage of your profits back to NGOs in India? I would have never worked on that type of work at the Baltimore Ravens or at a team specifically. Mm-hmm. And so it gave me a much larger array, in my pocket. I had this kind of bigger arsenal to do CSR work.
Was it hard to leave? Now, and you had this great experience, right? And thought it would go that way, but you never know, right? So was it hard to leave sports?
I think it's harder to leave sports if you didn't leave it all out on the floor. I am a person that lives life to the fullest as best I can, because we're not promised the next day. And so when I was with the Ravens, I did amazing things in real time. Right? I worked 2 Super Bowls. Actually, I worked the first one when I was an intern. The second one I worked just because I was helping out the NFL. So I went to 2 Super Bowls. I was able to have some amazing programs that are still there. I have some great partnerships with coaches and players and front office that I still have. I did the best I could while I was there. I didn't leave anything out on the floor, right? Or whatever I'm trying to say. I didn't leave anything. And so when I left in a good place. And I did it for me. I did it for me for the next stage of my career. So I think being in the moment and just making sure that you're taking advantage of everything that you can do and then not feeling the regret when you leave because you did such, it's helpful in not being as sad. Now, let's be honest. The year after I left, they went to the Super Bowl and they won. I'll tell you, there was a little bit of me in a fetal position watching the Super Bowl. I'll tell you that. So I'm going to be totally honest with you. Like, I can't, what? Y'all just went to the AFC Championship 6 years in a row. My heart breaks at Steelers games, at Colts games, at whatever. And then I leave, and then y'all go right back there. And there was definitely some feelings at that point, but I had friends that were there, and you want to be happy for them. So that's what you focus on.
Yes. Yeah, I've been there. Cubs left 2 years later. So I had a little bit of a cushion. But what you said is right. Like you leave it all on the floor. And then when you look at something like a Super Bowl or a World Series happening and you think you missed out, and then you're like, oh, wait a second. No. Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be right now. Like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So that does help. Mm-hmm. So now you came on back to MLB, is that right? After California?
Yeah. So I moved here a little over 5 years ago and landed the position with Major League Baseball.
All right. So tell everybody what your title is now.
I am Vice President of Social Responsibility.
What do you do in that role?
At its core, my job is to integrate social and charitable considerations into our entire business. So I have a small team that works on community affairs, and that the buckets of work that the team supports are, corporate community relations, some of our sponsor programs, educational programming like STEM education and character education. Employee volunteerism is one of the other buckets that we support. Our charitable event days is a very large bucket. The fight against cancer on Mother's Day, Father's Day, and childhood cancer awareness. And the last bucket for the team is our philanthropic support and disaster relief. And so the team works on those 5 pieces. And then for me personally, I do all those things, but I really am a person that is available and works throughout every other department to support and make sure that we're being the most effective corporate citizen that we can be.
That leads right into my next question. How are you an effective leader? How are you leading your team and creating that environment for them to thrive?
That's a great question. I think that leaders should be authentic to who they are. Mm-hmm. And for me, this kind of goes back to what we talked about in the very beginning at Verizon. At Verizon, I was a manager, and I was a manager of people who had more years in that company than I had of life. And that is the school of hard knocks. Mm-hmm. Because, they call you on your stuff and you want to be a good manager to them. And so you got to have tough skin. You have to, hey, you're talking to somebody as a 22-year-old, you're talking to someone in their 50s. How are they going to respect you as this little whippersnapper that's younger than their child? And so you have to bring your best self to them. You have to know the job well and get the respect. And I think I do the same now as a manager. And I really did learn that from that 2 years of being a manager at Verizon. It gave me a great foundation. I think personnel management is one of the most important things that I do. That's very important to me because their success is my success. Mm-hmm. And so I keep in touch with a ton of people who have reported to me over the past 20 years. And so how to be an effective leader for me with the management style is knowing what my people are working on, being a resource to them, but also on the flip side, having 101s, like not 1-to-1, but 101s. My group now, I'll say, hey, I think we should do a Reading 990s 101 class. I'm going to take you into this conference room for an hour, and I'm going to help you with your career, because if you want to be supportive of nonprofits and do more grant making, and just if somebody asks you and I'm off and they say, hey, this player wants to support this charity, what do you think? You need to be able to have an answer. Mm. So let me show you how to do some of the things that I do so that you're prepared. Teaching, I love teaching in that space. I love leading by example. I also am hard. I'm also in a position to say, okay, you just gave me your draft XYZ. And then if I read in the first 2 paragraphs, let's say 3 grammatical mistakes, I don't keep reading. I'll give it back. I'll say, do you feel like this is the best work that you want to give to me?
Uh-oh.
In my role, yes, there's an editor part of my role, but I'm also not here to check your work.
Yes.
You have to do it as if it's my work. You have to do the work and then bring it to me. And I'm only there to give you, hey, maybe we should rephrase it this way. But if I have to check your work and red pin it, then now we have an issue, because now you've come to me wanting, you didn't do your best work. And you're wanting me to take my time to do that before I can even read the content for content's sake. So I'm a teacher.
Yes.
I try to educate them on the work. I try to make them better. I give them the opportunity to go to conferences, to meet other people. I've said to both the people who report to me, I need you to expand your network. Who are you talking to that doesn't work in this industry? Who's your mentor? Find a mentor. Like that'll be something I'll put in a performance review for someone. At the end of the year, I'd like to know who your newest mentor is. So for me, in that space, that's how I'm as effective as a leader as I want to be.
Let me tell you, if somebody said to me, is this your best work? It's not even, it's kind of
it's
like,
not mean. It's not mean.
Not at all. It's just like, oh shoot. Like,
right.
It's
Check
honest.
yourself.
It is. And you're just like, I mean, sting for a little bit, but it's great to hear. And I imagine if I were trained, I came back to you and said, I don't know what I did. I don't know what I'm missing. I assume that you would explain everything you just said about the red pen, like, redlining it. And
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But if you, let's talk about you as you rose in your career. If you as a director, VP, whatever, gave something to your boss, a VP, SVP, EVP, chief, and it wasn't your best work, not good for your career.
Mm-hmm.
And I need my people to understand that giving it to me, this is preparing you for the next, right? Because I would never send my boss something that I didn't think was my best work. And you shouldn't send that to me either as your boss.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm also hearing you say, I love these 101s because you're giving everybody a look into like frameworks that you use, decision-making processes that you use to help you grow. So you're sharing it with them. There doesn't seem to be any sort of fear that someone's coming for your job.
I mean, we could unpack that for a while. I think that it's a sad situation, but it's an oftentimes situation where a boss is uncomfortable sharing those things and helping the people under them because there is fear of losing the job. And I think it's really tough if you're in the position where your boss isn't as concerned with you being successful because it may outshine them. That's a really, I've tried not to be in those situations because I think that's very deflating. It's very deflating. I believe in what I bring to the table, and that's changed as I've grown older, of course. But if I'm bringing someone up behind me, I'll tell my people, and I've said this for years, if I'm hit by a bus tomorrow, I want the work to live on.
Yes.
I don't want it all to go with me. And if you're not ready, now you're not going to know all the things I know, and you're not going to be able to do everything I did, but still some of the work, I want you to be in a position to carry that forward, and that's important the work is important to me. And if somebody comes up behind me and they're better than me and they are like, Melanie, get out of here, then it is what it is. But I also believe in my value to find the next job. And I know that so many people report to managers that are uncomfortable teaching or don't want to take the time to teach, or all of their stuff is on their desktop and not on the shared drive. I know a lot of people who report to managers like that, and you have to find a way to educate yourself away from the manager. You have to do the research. You have to listen to webinars and podcasts. You have to do everything you can for yourself to be ready when the opportunity hits.
Yes, that's perfect advice. Talk to us a little bit about your experience just working in a male-dominated industry.
I think for me, I don't have a problem working with men. I pretty much have done that my whole entire career. I probably get the angry Black girl comments. I am assertive. I can be aggressive. I know it's something I'm working on still. We're all a work in progress. But I think for me, it can be challenging at times. It can also be an opportunity at times to say, I should be in that room. I am a different opinion. Here's why you should listen to me. So there's an opportunity there. And there's also the opportunity to bring other women in. At Major League Baseball, our former diversity and inclusion lead started our employee resource groups, and we call them business resource groups. And I jumped at the chance to really launch and co-chair the women's group, because I am all about that life. I'm all about, in the very beginning, I purchased 5 Harvard Business Review books about office politics. And in the very beginning, I said, let's make this like a library. Like in the back of the book, old school, people have no idea what I'm talking about. In the back of the book, I put the little card, you know what I'm talking about, where you put the little slip in, you put your name in and a date, and you give it to the library. People who don't go to libraries have no idea what I'm talking about. But I said, I'm going to pass these around. I hope that we library style this thing. You read it, get the nuggets you need to get with dealing with office politics, and then loan it to somebody else. And I can't say that it was done. I still have 1 copy. The 4 are out there, wherever they are, but I still read that book. And I hope that the women, in our group passed it along and read it as well. I send out articles. I just sent out an article this week to a bunch of women that I work with and beyond. Here's a free webinar coming up that I think would be helpful. Or I got to be honest with you, I loved your podcast with Karen, and I forwarded that to our entire women's group. Hey, this is a great podcast. Hey, Karen's talking some real talk here. So when I see things like that I feel will inspire other folks or educate other folks or give them comfort, let's be honest, comfort right now, yes, in the strange days, I want to pass it along. I don't want it to be just in my heart and soul. I want other people to feel encouraged by it as well.
That's really good. So you said, I should be in the room, let me in, right?
Yeah.
So I'm imagining that you've had to have that conversation a few times at least. What was that like? How did you figure out how to use your voice, what to say, or what advice would you give women who are in that situation?
Well, I'll give a specific example that has happened to me or that I've had to navigate twice. And I can't say that this is because I'm a woman, but let's just, you can parallel it however you'd like to parallel it. Community relations, CSR, in sports, at some teams, at some leagues, is a lever to pull for sponsorship. And so the sponsorship team will say, I just signed a deal with this company. They want to do this program in the community. Here's the program, go execute it. And it happened a lot earlier in the early days of CSR and community at teams and leagues. But even with the Ravens, I said to our sponsorship team, and higher up in sponsorship is mostly men, no matter where you are.
True. Yep.
I said to them, I think it's more valuable if I'm in the room having the conversation with the sponsor and you at the same time. You don't have to regurgitate what I tell you. Hey, put some stuff on a slide and we'll repeat it to them. Well, I should be in the room with you and I can give the personal and we can ideate on an opportunity that will work for both the sponsor and for us. And so I've done that at both the Ravens and Major League Baseball. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing when you go in and say, I can do this, here's some ideas. And then they're like, well, you know what, we should all just be together. Let's have the meeting. At baseball, our sponsorship team will reach out and say, hey, we're meeting with this client in Ohio, you should come. Well, damn, when? What day and where and when? We're pitching this new client. You should come with us. I'm there. I'm canceling everything else because I want them to know I'm invested in social value and business value. And we have to be in our position in this community and CSR world, a value add to everyone. And that goes back to my role. I integrate social and charitable considerations into everything that we do. So I'm in the room, and that happened at both the Ravens and Major League Baseball, where maybe early on, there's more of that company wants to do something. Can you do it after the fact? No, let me do that. And, an example of that, Scott's is our official lawn care company. And they used to have a program where they'd say, hey, MLB club or MLB team, what field should we refurbish in your particular community? And the club or the team would say, hey, you should do John Doe Elementary School. We love them. They're in the shadows of the ballpark. And Scott's was like, okay, well, we want to get added value for this relationship. And so I said, I think what would be really important to do is a grant program, because then you're telling a much larger group of people, you have the opportunity to have a field refurbished. You have a chance, no matter if you're an MLB market or not. And so we're on our 4th iteration of that. In the first few iterations, we had, I'd say 300 or so applications. This year, 2020, 500 applications from 48 states, 300 cities, and we celebrated the 4 fields that we refurbished. But the stories that come out of these grant programs and that come out of these applications that folks say to us, here's why I need this field refurbished. Here's why, our community would really deserve this, are extraordinary. We did a field refurbishment in Austin, Indiana, that had been hit by the opioid epidemic hard. They were not playing ball on this field. People said it's unsafe. There's too many needles on the ground. They had one of the highest outbreaks of HIV. We would have never have known about this opportunity to help this community if we had just kept going to 4 teams every year to say, hey, tell us who you want us to support. So that's the value that I brought to that relationship that they would not have moved forward on. So,
wow. And this all starts with being asked to be let in the room.
Yes, because you deserve to be in the room.
Yes. I feel like you should drop your mic and walk away.
Me too. The confidence, fake it till you make it. Like this, practice with your friends beforehand. How do I tell someone I deserve to be in the room? You better do some play acting with your friends beforehand.
Yeah. Talk to yourself, talk to your Zoom.
Write it out.
There you go. Write it out, full circle. I have one last question for you. Talk to us how you remain true to yourself through all of this.
I think when friends are asked if they'd name 3 characteristics about me, a lot of them would say authentic, which is probably good and bad because I am who I am. I'm a Taurus. I love astrology, and I'm a true Taurus. And I think, I do some of the things you guys were talking about before. I do Myers-Briggs and Enneagram and all those things. And I write and process. And I know that I have core values and things that are important to me. And I also know that I have a good support system, that if I don't get the job, or if I say something that is a little iffy and people feel bad about it and I'm afraid, I'm like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have said that, they're going to fire me, then I'm like, you know what, but I'm still walking out with my head held high. I didn't let them bully me. I didn't let somebody else make me feel less than, because there's something in me that I understand, the value I have. And I guess, like we said, bring it back to being spiritual. And, you have the Untamed book behind you, and it's about finding the God in yourself. And I really feel like I have a North Star. And I believe in myself, but I also believe that if things don't go wrong, I have enough to navigate it and overcome it and move on to the next thing. So that's how I stay authentic, is just to be grounded in who I know I am to be.
Melanie, this has been fantastic. If someone wanted to get in touch with you, how could they do that?
So my email is Melanie, so MELANIE .LeGrande. The last name is LEGRANDE at MLB.com. So you can email me, LinkedIn for sure. Send a note with LinkedIn. Don't just send me a thing and I'm like, I don't know who you are. Have we met? Like, just give me some context.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And don't send your resume along and say, can you look at this for me?
Yes. Yeah. Because I am an editor. And if I wanted to do that, I'd spend an hour with you going over your stuff. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
I appreciate you having me. And I appreciate that you are doing this and making this available to whomever, wherever. All the podcasts available on your site, like this, it's a treasure trove, and people should really be leaning in. You've got so many different areas. You've got professional sports leagues, you've got agencies, you've got associations. It's a treasure trove. So congrats to you on the success you've had, and more to come.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So what did you think of this episode? Do you know another woman who works or is aspiring to work in sports? Would you do me a favor and share this with them? It would mean so much if together we could support and inspire other women on their journey. And let's stay connected. I love meeting and talking to new people. Follow me on Instagram at Jahaan Blake and join the free Game of Her Own community by visiting jahaanblake.com. I can't wait to meet you.